Hello, welcome to this week's How's the Market, Pensacola. Well, I'm going to need you to row. What in the world does that mean? I'm going to need you to row. I heard the story from a friend of mine about a week ago, and I figured I would share it on today's episode just because it made a bunch of sense. A friend of mine wanted to take his family out. He's got adult kids in their 20s. And wanted to take they were all together and wanted to take them kind of whitewater rafting down to Colorado. They had been whitewater rafting 4 or 5 years ago, and they always remembered it, right, as being a great experience. And so they did that. Well, he called reluctantly the company they used 5 years ago because, well, it was a great experience. And they said, we know you guys are normally booked 4 to 6 weeks out, but is there any way we can fit something? Have you had a cancellation? Something like that. They said, no problem. Bring them all down today. He thought it was a little weird because they always were booked 4 to 6 weeks out, right? So he went on down there. There was nobody there. There was employees, but there were no customers there, which kind of raised a little bit more of a flag. It's like, why are there no customers here? Well, come to find out, as the lady came out to start to give the safety briefing, what had happened is there had been more rain upriver than there had been in the last 8 years. So there was a huge change in the river. The river had rose and the whitewaters had gotten a little more intense. So she said, he said that we had a new guide, the last guide, even though he worked out really well, this lady came out. My buddy's like my height, so I'm 6'2". He said she was probably, 5'7", 5'6", 5'5", maybe even 5'4". She was short for us 6'2" folks anyways. And she came out very, very stern and said, this is what's happened, handing everybody their life vest, right? You're going to take this, you're going to take this, you're going to take this. And then she made everyone look at her. Look at me. Again, 6'2", I'm having to look down, but I'm looking at her, right? That's what he did. She said, when I say row, you row like your life depended on it. You do not stop. Is that clear? He said he turned around, looked at his family. His wife gave him a look like, what in the world have you gotten us into, right? So they got into the raft. They started down. It was nice and calm. It was a little bit faster than what they were used to, but it was a nice, calm ride. And then all of a sudden, you see some of the whitewaters coming up. So it's starting to get a little more intense. And he said the guide looked and went, row. But it was real easy. Just row. Let's guide and row. So he's got 2 adult sons in their 20s, strong. They were rowing. He was rowing. Everybody was just kind of, lollygagging around. But they were kind of rowing. Finally, the guide said, row! Got everyone's attention because her voice, her inflection changed. He said, so we kind of went, okay. And she screamed it again, row! They started rowing. Said, I turned around and looked at both my sons, and their paddles were just, there was no rhyme or reason, but they were hitting the water, right? They were rowing with everything they got. He said, I'm rowing like there's no tomorrow. He said, I turned around and saw my wife and daughter. I think they were trying to row, but I'm not quite sure the paddles were hitting the water. They were just, in the motion. Everybody was rowing. He said, and I turned and I looked past where we were rowing to, and I noticed a dip in the water. So I knew we were about to go down some. So I figured, okay, we're going to row to the crest, and then we're going to go down some. We can take a break, and then we'll row as we continue on. But the guide kept looking at him going, row! Okay, why are we rowing so much? They hit the crest, and they started the descent, right? As they hit the crest, the descent, the guide screamed, row! Now, he said, for just a second, I thought, why are we rowing down? Because it seems like, I've read a bunch of blog posts. I've read some books on whitewater rafting. I've went to some great sites on whitewater rafting that have said as they go down, you let gravity do the work. Then you run the way back up. This guide was screaming all the way down, row. Said we were out of breath so bad, but we were rowing. We were pushing as hard as we could push. They finally hit the bottom. And as they started their way up, about 3/4 of the way up, it started to slow. They were getting pulled back, but they kept rowing. Why? Because the person up front was screaming, row! Finally, They said we almost felt like we were fixing to fall back. And they said if you fall back, you're kind of in a wash and it can get, well, frankly, dangerous. But as they finally stopped, they crested over. He said, and when we got finished with that, every one of us was completely out of breath. And the guide was just smiling and said, that's why I had to tell you to row now, because there's a lot of people who will cancel because that's rough. That is actually a class. And I don't know the classifications of whitewater rafting. I haven't been, but my buddy was starting to tell me some technical stuff, and I'm like, I don't get that. But I understand the premise, right? I understand the premise. So they actually, instead of continuing down the river, pulled off at the next one because they said everybody was completely exhausted and we couldn't row again. He said, was it a memorable trip? Absolutely. Was it as fun as the first time they ever went whitewater rafting? No. But I brought up the story because I think right now, this market we're talking about in real estate has changed. So remember the story, it was since the last 8 years, it hadn't rained as much as it just did upriver. So the river had changed. You think the last 10 years has been slightly different. We've actually been pretty calm in real estate. It's been just steady going up. We've had low interest rates. We've had kind of a calmness since 2012. 2008, we had a huge drop, right? And so we had to figure it, but we've been steady climbing since then. We had that drop, we've been steady climbing. So the guide that helped 5 years ago, 6 years ago, has not been through the tougher ones where you have to look at someone and say, row. Row. It really makes a difference who you're working with to see if they've actually gone down the river when the water's high and the white waters are rough, as opposed to very smooth sailing, okay, or rafting in this particular case. In this market, things are changing so rapidly, all right? We watched interest rates go from 3 to 5. I saw some 6% yesterday on 30-year fixes, with some people saying we may see 7, because now it looks like this week the Fed may raise rates 3/4 of a basis point instead of a half basis point, which we thought they would, to actually try and curb some of this inflation stuff. So there's a lot of things changing very quickly. I have seen more, I find it funny because I've been doing this a while, so I find it funny that people use certain terminologies. Used to be, we would say price reduction. So I listed something at 900,000, we brought it down to 875, hey, it's a price reduction. Now people say there's a negative connotation to the word reduction, so now we're going to say price improvement. Okay, I understand it, I understand the psychology behind it, I get it. It's the same thing. So whether I say I've seen an increase in price reductions or an increase in price improvements, I'm meaning the same thing. The market's shifting, right? Row. Don't just go to a website where you read this blog post or you saw this YouTube video, and I'm sitting here and I'm teaching on YouTube, right? Or you saw it and you think that because this person used this technique and it worked every time, that it will work now. Most people that work with me know that I always use the analogy of chess. If you ever played chess, yeah, well, that means that you can sit there and look 2 to 3 moves ahead, but you have to wait for your opponent to move. Because if you try and come up with every scenario all the time, it's not going to work. Did you see the Queen's Gambit? All right, you could sit there and just staring at the ceiling, a move after move after move, and drive yourself crazy because there's so many different ways to do this. What does that mean? That means we need someone that understands when to tell you to row and when to tell you it's okay. Because that website's going to tell you don't row on the way down, you let gravity do that. If my buddy had done that, they could have been in a world of hurt because they wouldn't have made it back up. Okay? So there are things that we need to pay attention to. As we see higher rates, I think that's going to be the norm for the next 3 to 4 years. I think that we're probably going to be 5s, 6s, 7s. We may even touch 8s on mortgage rates, okay, which is fine. Right now, the 5s, 6s, we're getting back to what a normal stuff was. So we were really low and we kind of got spoiled with that. Now we're getting back to normal. So what does that mean? Well, it means we need to take an idea and take a different look at what our options are. I was talking with a customer last week. They're going to be here for 3, maybe 4 years tops, right? Military. And they were told, hey, you're going to be here 3, maybe 4 years tops. That's it. then it's going to transfer out. Okay, well, they're looking to buy something. Why wouldn't we look, I know I'm cussing to some people because they went through the crash. Why wouldn't we look at a 5-year ARM? Now, what's an ARM? An ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. Okay, so it stays fixed for the first 5 years, and then it becomes adjustable after that. But this particular couple said, we're going to do that. I said, all right, is there any chance you're going to turn this into a rental when you leave? No, we're going to want to sell it because we're going to be going back home. This is my last duty station. We're going to go back home. We're going to retire there. And I'm going to use that for a down payment for our forever home. Perfect. That's a great plan. I would love to talk to all my clients and them have that type plan already signed out. So they knew in 3 to 4 years we're selling. But they didn't want to spend the money every month for a rent. And that makes great sense. Why not look at a 5-year ARM? Because when we pulled the 5-year ARM, those first 5 years, now it does adjust up if rates are higher, right, after the 5 years. But that first 5 years, he was getting 3.875. How would you know to even do that? Because most people, you say adjustable rate mortgage, and they run because of what happened in 2006, 7, and 8. The crash of 8, 9, 10. And they blame it all on ARMs. No. ARMs were not the problem. There were some other factors stacked onto ARMs. So this could be an underlying. But we knew the plan here. The plan is 3, 4 years, we're going to sell. Great. So it's a 36 to 48 month play. Great. Well, then let's just get a 60-month 5-year. It's amortized over 30 years. And I did see a product come out of California that amortizes an ARM over 40, but balloons it in 30. And basically, without getting into too much detail, that basically means they amortize, so the payments are a little less, but at the 30-year mark, whatever you have due, you have to pay or refinance completely. So you're not going all the way to 40 years. And that product makes sense in certain marketplaces for certain situations, to include our marketplace for certain situations. But what do you need? You need somebody at the helm who's been down this river when it's high and can tell you to row. Row. Who you work with really matters. All right, there's a lot of different ways we can play this as a buyer. Sellers right now are thinking it's a great time to sell, and it is. We're starting to see an increase in inventory. We're going to talk about the 2 counties here in just a second. We are seeing a little bit of an increase in inventory, but it's nowhere near enough to where we're coming back towards a neutral market, except certain price points. All right, let's stop talking theoretical and let's talk about our 2 counties inventory levels right now. Let's go. All right, if you don't know the show, I always start when I jump to this segment. I always start this segment with this slide right here. It says if you have between 6 and 7 months worth of inventory, you have what's called a neutral market. Anything greater than 7 months considered a buyer's market. Anything less than 6 months considered a seller's market. What the slide doesn't say, anything greater than 9 months is a hyper buyer market. Anything less than 3 is a hyper seller's market. Let's jump over to Escambia County to begin with. And look, we got 580 properties active now. It's definitely higher than we've had in a while. Looks like most everything is under 2 months inventory. These are the price points on the left if you hadn't seen it, and on the right is your inventory. And I try and color code them to make them easy. We haven't seen any yellow, green, or blue in a while. Yellow would be our neutral, right? Orange is our sellers. Red is our hyper sellers. Green's buyers. Blue's hyper buyers. Believe it or not, in 2019, when I started this show, I had blue on these. And that's less than 3 years ago. Well, I guess I started April 1st, 3 years ago. But yeah, we less than a year ago, or 3 years ago, we had blue. Here, everything up to $550,000 is still a hyper seller's market. Those first-time home buyers, the 100 to 200,000 range, 0.9 months and 0.6 months. So those are still definitely hyper sellers. The 200 to 250,000, 0.6 months. I got like 3 people looking in that area right now. 49 properties active right now. I got 110 pending. So there's 159 total. Technical issue there. So we got 159 total, but only 49 of them are active right now. And we're looking. We're actively looking in that area. So I know a ton of people that are looking in that area. Most of these guys are first-time home buyers. All right, so they're really just trying to get in. They're getting approved for somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. We get up to the $550,000 to $600,000 mark, and we've jumped out of the hyper sellers to a sellers. Now that's been a pocket for the last few weeks, right? That particular pocket's been a little weird. So we've been over 3 months inventory now for about 2 months in that pocket. So if I bring something on in that pocket, do I need to change my marketing? Yeah. The $600,000 to $650,000. There's 6 active, and I've only got 1 month's inventory. It's very weird how that looks, because if you look, $550,000 to $600,000 is 4.2. $650,000 to $700,000 is 4.4. So our highest inventory levels, and then our luxury $700,000 plus is 3.4. But then this one sits as a 1. I think that's just because a severe lack of inventory, like an overlack, if that's even a word, severe lack of inventory at that price point. So the $600,000 to $650,000, I would still treat anything over $550,000 as just a seller's market and not a hyper seller's market. All right, even though this data says $600,000 to $650,000 is a hyper seller's market, I've only got 1 month's inventory, I would be treating all of it as just a seller's, not a hyper seller's. Does that change up our marketing some as a seller? Yes. Does that change up our offering strategy as a buyer? Yeah, sure does. And that's important to bring up. Offering strategies as a buyer. I got 3 buyers last week, won their first property. We've got different strategies we employ. They actually won their first property. I got 2 that haven't won their first property. We've looked at a second and third. Okay. We're still employing some of those techniques that are making all kinds of sense. So is it changing when I'm sitting there talking about $330,000? Well, sure. Even though that says 1 and this says 1. No, you got to look at what brackets it around. There may be one calm spot in the river, but you are right there in the middle of the circle of danger, if we were going back to my analogy. So you need to change things up. One thing I did want to bring up here, 50,000 to 100,000, things are selling 91 to 94% of list. So they're not selling over list in that point. A lot of the stuff is selling over list, except when you get up to the luxury. All right, you're getting 98, 97. So when I say there's some changes, there's some rain happening upriver that hasn't happened in 10 years. Okay, that's what I mean. Hopefully that analogy is making sense. Let's jump over to Santa Rosa County. 357. We were under 200 a few months ago. I got 357 active, and look at this. Same thing, except we jump up to 600,000 here. 3.7 months, 4.8 months, 3.4 months. So that's 650 to 700 here. It's at 4.8 months. We're creeping up almost on a neutral market. Can you believe that? It'd be nice if we actually saw a yellow. 357 active in Santa Rosa County, still under 1 month's inventory until you get up to $350,000. And then that's only 1.2 months worth of inventory. Well, I guess 450 to 500 is 1.3, and then we don't get to 2 months inventory until we hit $550,000, and then we hit out of the hyper sellers market and into a sellers. So that's a little different. We've got a little bit more inventory that has grown up some. And I started this whole show talking about I need you to row. Well, what I need you to do is I need you to understand that you're not going to navigate the river the same way you did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. The river's changed. There's an old saying, I don't know if it's Egyptian or Roman, that talks about a man never steps in a river twice, never steps in the same river twice, because the man has changed and so has the river. The river in the real estate market is bananas right now. All right. And if you listen to all the headlines and all the squawking that's going on online, okay, it's completely nuts. Everybody's saying, well, real estate's dead. Real estate's not where you want to invest your money right now. I don't believe that shelter is going to go out of vogue anytime soon. So much so that I have my next rental under contract right now, and I'm also working with a group. There's a group of us that are picking up a 190 some odd unit place in Houston. So I do look around the area too, around the country, because there are different opportunities around here. I love our area. I have a lot of property in our area. But there's also some other opportunities, and I'm going to invest the way that we should. We're going to make sure that we look for things. I had a friend of mine that picked up 4 properties in Louisville. I got a friend that works the Louisville market. Well, 2 years ago, he picked up 4 properties. He was only paying like $50,000 a piece, but he was renting them out for $1,500. You do the math. If you pay $50,000 for a property and you're getting $18,000 back every year, how long until you have all your money back? That's a great rate of return. But you got to look at that. The river has changed. So we need someone that has been able to navigate it, that can look at you, whether you're a buyer or a seller, and go, row. I've talked with people right now that are in serious hurts because they've moved away. So the property's in disrepair. We've got to figure things out. They've brought up our instant offer program, all right, which I can bring up now. I always end the show about that. Our instant offer program gives you a chance to say, hey, something's wrong with the property. I don't have the time or the capital to fix this. Let's talk about an offer. I made them an offer. It made all kinds of sense. They had another claim, an insurance claim coming, and they're going to keep that. So there's going to be their profit right there. And I've got this. So perfect. Done. Finished. That made sense for them. I had some people a few months back that had to be out in Dallas. They got a fantastic job offer. They had to be out in Dallas, but they need to be gone in 10 days. Okay. And they didn't have time to do work and everything else. Okay. Some other people have taken our instant offer, where we come out and give you an instant offer on your property, and said, okay, let's use that as the floor. Maybe we can put it on the market and see if we can get more. Great. I'm one of the few people around here that will do that. Because a lot of people that are giving you the instant offer program are just investors. Some of them are just what they call wholesalers. They're fine. I have no problem with wholesalers. I think they deserve a place in the marketplace. I think they have a spot in the marketplace. But they want you just to take the instant offer. They don't want you to come on the MLS. And then, of course, every person that's in licensed real estate, they don't want you to take an instant offer. They want to bring it on the MLS so they can work on through a commission. Okay, cool. I can offer both. And I've had people take me up on both. They've had the instant offer and they use the instant offer as a floor. You know, we laughed because one guy said, hey, I'm going to use your instant offer as a floor, but let's stick it on the MLS for 4 weeks and see if I can get more. He did wind up. He didn't get much more, but he did wind up getting more. And we all went out for a cocktail afterwards. And I'm like, I really wanted to add that to the rental portfolio. And he went, well, you should have offered me more. I laughed. He laughed. It was great for him. I don't have a problem with someone doing that. I don't have a problem with this. I'm here to help my clients get what they want. That's why we have some few announcements going to be coming out in the 3rd and 4th quarter of how I can continue to help them, because I have seen the range change upriver, which is causing our river to rise, which means the whitewaters are getting a little more dangerous. And some people in this industry right now need someone who's been there and can tell you when and when not to row. Not just reading a blog, but has actually survived this. So when you start doing this 20, 30 years, right, and I've been in real estate and finance since 1993. Been a minute, right? Coming up on 30 years. And you've seen markets. So I've seen the river go high. I've seen the river go low. I've seen where we've just been steady and calm. I've seen where we've had extreme volatility. The stuff that we're reading in the market right now is extreme volatility. Do I think we're going to see a crash like we did in 08? Nope. If you don't believe me on that, go back and watch last week's show, or May 31st, I think is the show that I talked about. I explained all of that. So I don't think we're going to have a crash. That's not going to happen. There's no data points to that. It says we're going to slow down. So instead of the double-digit appreciation, we're going to have single-digit appreciation. But that's what we're supposed to do anyways. This has been great. It's been a great run. Let's slow down some. Let's slow down. Let's help some of the first-time home buyers get in on the game. Let's look at investment portfolios as what they are, a portfolio. If you haven't sat down with a portfolio manager, you know, when I start talking about my stocks and bonds and notes and things that I hold, I sit down with people that I talk to. I sit down with my accountant. You know, it's funny how in school they used to say, hey, if you worked with someone else, that's called cheating. Well, out here in the real world, that's called collaboration. And I have an attorney, I have an accountant, I have money managers, I have partners that do different types of real estate that I understand, but I don't work in. All right, but it's still profitable. Why not collaborate? why not have a sit down and discuss the portfolio? Because if you haven't looked at your portfolio in 2 years, then you need to. There needs to be a full evaluation of the portfolio. So those are things. I got some stuff coming. I don't mean to be on a soapbox. This is a longer episode than I was, but I need you to understand that right now I'm that person that's come out that nobody was expecting, but I'm shoving a life jacket on you and go, I can get you through this. And you can actually get to the other side of these. But when I say row, row. All right, pay attention to what I'm exactly teaching you to do, because the market's changing and it's changing very, very quickly. All right, like I said, again, I guess that's a little longer than I normally go, but hey, wanted to explain some stuff to you. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.
I'm a man on a mission.
My mission is to help people break through all the noise out there and
Don't need no permission.
I want to help you get to actual truth. Don't you just want the truth?